All right, guys. So today's tutorial is about making sure that when you have code in a code element, in a bricks editor, that instance of that code will only run once. An example here is I've got a accordion that I've created using a standard bricks accordion. I've changed it to make it more accessible. I did a video on this several months ago. This is a new way of doing the code. All of this is the same. The code is different. Now, the idea here is that if I duplicated that there, I now have 3 copies of the same code in the same editor. All right, let's have a save of that. I'm just going to make sure that actually works. So I've got my top copy here, which is basically collapse. I've got this one here with the independent toggle, and the first one is open. And they're all working, right? And I can tab through these, use my enter key, tab. So this is the accessible part of it. Okay, so this is all working and the code is not clashing with each other because it is only running once. Okay, now the reason I did this is I'll create a bit of code and I'll stick it into a template. So for example, this accordion, it could be a switch, could be whatever it is, and it'll have JavaScript code associated with it. I want to be able to just use my library and insert that into a page and have the code there. So it makes sense to put it into a code element. But once it's there, the problem is that unless you do something to make sure it only runs once, it's going to not work properly. My general recommendation is when you do that is you take the code that's inside the code element, you take it out of the code element, put it into an external code manager or your child theme, and then you delete these code elements from the editor. That is my general recommendation. But what I realize is some people don't do that. So what we're going to do is allow for when someone just gets the template, sticks it on the page, gets another copy of it, sticks it on the page, it should work. All right, so that's what I had to solve, the problem I had to solve. So this one here is a little bit for the coding geeks, but I think there's something to learn for those that are just looking into JavaScript as well. So I'm going to show you what solution I ended up coming up with this, and it has a side effect from the solution which makes the code accessible to other scripts so if you wanted to create code that one script talks to another script, it's much easier to do. Okay, so very hard to see in this little tiny editor here in Bricks. So I'm going to show you this code in VS Code. So here it is here in VS Code. I've collapsed a class because that's not the important bit. So this is my standard setup now. So this is the code from that code block where I have a recommendation up the top here, which is basically telling the user, take this code, stick it into an external code manager or into your child theme, and then delete these code blocks from the editor. So if you use this as a template from a library, it's got the code block, put it into the external code manager or whatever, delete the code block, and then just then from then on, when you duplicate that template, you're not going to have any issues with code clashes. Just keeps it tidier as well. So if you don't do that, if you just insert that template, leave the code block and duplicate the template on the page or insert it more than once, this will solve the problem. How do we do that? So the first thing we want to do is we want to create an object on Windows so we can keep track of the instances of this script. So we're going to create one here called WPE. And this neat little way of defining defaults is what it does. If it exists already, it just assigns it to itself. So effectively does nothing. Okay. If that doesn't exist, if it's undefined, it executes the other side of the OR, which assigns it to a object with one property called scripts with an empty array. So this is basically, if Windows WPE is undefined, set it to scripts. If it is defined, do nothing, basically. It's a really concise way of doing that. All right, so that's the object that we've put onto the window to track our instances of our scripts. Okay, then we have a closure. So this is called a closure when we have this kind of opening at the top and that closing at the bottom. And what that closure does for us here is it gives us a unique context inside that. So we can call our constants and variables and classes exactly the same names. We could actually duplicate that down here. If I copied that down there, and this was a completely different script, just that's expanded on me. if I contracted that as well. So that is a completely different script. These two will not clash with each other, even though they have the same names, because it's in its own context within that closure. So that's just a side comment on that. So always put it in a closure. All right, now, so what this does, basically we set a constant for the script name. So this is going to be the same on every single script. We have a script name, and then we put a unique name here for our script name. We have a main class. It could be called whatever you like. But it doesn't really matter because we're not going to refer to it by name. We're going to refer to it by its instance. Okay, so down here, what we have is a document listener waiting for the DOM content to load. So we can put this script anywhere. It can be at the beginning of the editor, at the end of the editor, an external code manager. Doesn't matter because it's going to wait till the DOM's loaded and then it's going to run the script. So all of the HTML will already be on the editor ready for this to run. All right, what we're doing then is if this script has not been instantiated, so we don't have a array index for that script name, so we haven't instantiated this before. If it doesn't exist, we're going to create a new instance, so new main class in that index there. So the next time this runs, it's going to go, that already exists. I'm not going to create a new instance. So this bit here is what tells it to only create that once and run that once. That is the magic in this, and that will make sure that works. Now, there's a couple side effects for this, which is really good. So if we look at this as a class, we have a constructor. That's where we do our initialization. So when we do a new instance of this, then we're going to run this class. This is going to set my defaults, and it's going to call my init function. And then all the rest of this is just the code that makes this specific script actually work. Okay, so that there is, in a nutshell, what I'm doing to make sure that I have consistency in the way that I'm writing my code and that it will only run once regardless how many times you stick it on the editor. All right, so the side effect here is that if we have a look at the scripts here, so look at Windows WPE. So in here, I'm going to have a look at my console, and I'm going to look at console log. Oh, well, I've got capitals. Window dot WPE dot. I love the way this autocomplete works here. So we've got scripts dot. Here's my WPE accordion, right? So I can actually log that out, and I've got my instance of that on window WP scripts WP accordion. So I'll show you something here. If I go window, actually I'll make a constant here. So I'm going to go constant. Okay, I'll just call A equals scripts dot accordion. Okay, so I'm going to set a constant here. And on my constant, I'm going to go a dot debug equals true. Okay, now that, actually I should head back to the code to show you what that is. So in my code here, I have a flag, which I'm calling debug. And then I've got a little method here, which is debug log. And that's only if debug's enabled, it's going to log. That way there, I can log out. So this dot debug log, etc., etc. And what that will do is I only have to change one flag, and then I've got my debugging either on or off. So that's just a side thing. Now, if we have a look at our console, when I click the button, I get this debugging. All right, click the button, I get debugging. Let's just clear that out. Click, I get debugging. All right, if I do a dot debug equals false. All right, and now if I click these buttons, no debugging. Right, so what I'm showing you, I can actually access this object from the window.wpe.scripts, which means that if I have another script on the page that wants to listen to or interact with this accordion, I can easily access that. Right, in the accordion, for example, I might create a event, which is when it changes. And then I will have a listener from another script listening for when that accordion changes. I could throw a event on the window object so it's global, and listen to that as well, or I can just add a listener to the specific accordion. So it gives you a lot of scope on how you can connect your scripts. It does expose the scripts, but you got to be careful of what's in your script and what that connection can do. But I think it's a really good way of managing it, and I think it's something that I'm going to do going forward with all of my code. I'm just going to make sure that I have this structure here, and that will make sure that it doesn't matter whether you stick it on the editor 100 times or once. It's only going to run once. That is it. I hope that makes sense to some of you at least, and you get some value out of this. So if you like this, hit the subscribe, hit the like. Thanks, guys.